All right, I'm going to show you how I make my sourdough. So first I get a scale in my bowl. I'm going to make 2 loaves. I have 2 different starters. One's been in my family for decades. This one I actually bought at a farmer's market thing up in Canada where my wife's from. They're both kind of the same. I don't know why I keep 2. I should just mix them up. I start off with a little water. Actually, maybe more than a little water. And I just use tap water. I don't use anything fancy. So I put 365 grams of water in each bowl. Good enough. Gotta zero it. I forget to do that all the time. Almost. This is going to be a real pain to do with one hand for filming, but oops, that was a little too much. But I'm just going to leave it. Next, I put 100 to 150 grams of starter in each one. All right, if I fail at this, I may have to stop filming because, you know, putting starter in is not that complicated. Yep, gonna put this down and do it hands-free. Okay, got my starter in there. Now I'm gonna just kind of mix the water in the starter with this little whisk. I mean, I don't think it matters what you use, but just to get the starter dispersed. I fed my starter yesterday afternoon and just left it on the counter all night till this morning. And I don't really have a particular feeding schedule. I just didn't know if I had enough in there to make my bread, so I fed it to get some more ready. And I'll probably feed it after I'm done mixing this up and then I'll leave it on the counter all day and put it in the fridge tonight. Okay. Now, I'm gonna put flour in. Zero my scale again. And I know lots of people use fancy bread flours and stuff. I just use cheap crap. So I'm gonna put 500 grams of flour in each bowl. Flour is easy because if you go too much, it's easy to scoop it back out. Like that. Okay, I've one. Zero my scale. Actually, I lied. This is bread flour that I bought. It was pretty cheap. It was like, but it's got a real high protein content, and it does make the crumb a little bit nicer, but it's not like, I usually make it with just cheap crap, so cheapest enriched flour you get. Okay, last ingredient is salt. See, I'm not professional. I should have had all this laid out, but. And I do 10 to 12 grams. Zero your scale again. There's 12. This one. Whoa, got way too much. I'm just gonna pinch some out and throw it in the sink. I don't want it to be too salty. Okay. Now, you can mix this however you want to mix it. Like, not, I don't know if a mixer will do it because it's pretty thick. I've just used my hands, but I don't want to clean up. My wife has this, which is apparently some kind of a dough baton, and it works really good to stir this stuff up. I'm gonna, again, put the phone down and just stir it up, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done stirring. Okay, I'm done mixing this. You're just really trying to get the flour and water and everything kind of stirred up. It's kind of this, I've heard it referred to as a shaggy dough. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get a cloth and I'm going to wet it down really good. I'm gonna wring it out, which again with one hand is harder than two, and then I'm going to put this kind of out of the way, and I'm just going to cover it with this wet towel for half an hour. So that it kind of just sits and soaks up the rest of the flour and everything. All right, I'm going to feed my starter now and leave it on the counter the rest of the day. By the way, it is about 20 minutes to 8 o'clock in the morning. There's all kinds of stuff about how to feed this and what you should do. I feed it the same amount of grams of water as flour. And I just take a scoop of flour, dump it in. I got 43, so I'm gonna feed it 50 just because that's a nice even number. Feed this one 50. This one's actually kind of runny. And it doesn't matter if it's runny or thick, but it's just harder to scoop out if it's runny because it runs off the spoon. So I'm actually gonna put probably only 40 grams of water in this. So I got 58 grams of flour. So I'm just gonna do like 50 grams of water. Gotta zero it. I wanna thicken this one up a little bit. Good enough. Sorry, I'm not a good filmer, but I almost forgot to zero that. $30, need a little more. Okay. I'm just gonna turn this off. I'm just gonna stir this up with a spoon. I'm gonna close the lids on them and leave them on the counter till tonight, and then I'll just put them in the fridge. But I'll be back when this is sat for half an hour, and we'll do what they call stretch and folds. Anyways, okay, it's been 30 minutes. So we're gonna do what they call stretch and fold, and this first one's kind of interesting. I'm gonna wet my hand because the dough is super sticky. And you're just gonna reach down under it, grab it. This is hard one-handed because I usually hold the bowl. Just fold it over, stretch it. And you'll feel this dough, it's just kind of a gloppy mess, but you'll feel this dough start to come together. I think they call it building structure. But you'll definitely feel it in your hands, like already, even after just a few. And I'm gonna do this quite a few times on this first one. You'll see that it's, like I could have pulled the dough apart on that first stretch, but now it's like kind of sticking to itself. It's kind of coming together, I guess. I'm trying to get a good stretch here. I'm not wanting to tear it, I'm just trying to get it to stretch. Like you'll feel it want to tear, so you kind of just let it slip through your hand and stretch it a little bit. This must have been the when we had more water in it. Feels very moist. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna wet my hand down again. And again, see it's kind of lumpy and stuff, and in here it's starting to get smoother. This bowl's a lot lighter, so it's harder to pull it up. I'll talk a little bit about starter. There's all this information about how you should feed your starter and when you should feed it. I do everything. Like today I fed it because I didn't have enough. I fed it yesterday afternoon and left it and then used it this morning. But I've literally pulled it out of the fridge after sitting for a week or two and just used it because I had enough, and I don't really see any difference in the bread. Then there's all kinds of noise about how you should feed it. 1 part starter, 1 part water, 1 part flour, 2 part starter. I don't do any of that. I just, like you saw, I grab a scoop, a little cup, and dump a bunch in and put about that same amount of water in, stirred up. And if I'm really low, I'll put, a lot more. And I'll put the amounts of the recipe down in the video description. I'm going to put the phone down so I can kind of manage the bowl, but you get the general idea. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this back with a wet towel again and let it sit 30 more minutes. Okay, we're back for the next stretch and folds. Wet hand again. On the rest of these, you just kind of do 1 on each side. So I'm going to do stretch, fold, turn it 90 degrees, try and get under it a little. Like I say, this is really hard with one hand. Stretching, fold it over. One more. Okay, that one's done. Let's do this one. This bowl's heavier, so it's easier. So I'm going to do this one more time. That's probably the hardest part about sourdough is you just, for this first part, at least for me, you got to have a good half an hour to, well, good 2 hours, because you mix it, let it sit 30 minutes, just stretch, fold, 30 minutes, stretch, fold, 30 minutes, stretch and fold. And we started this about 7:30 this morning, and it's almost 9. So I'm going to just do one more of these. Cover it up again. So 30 more minutes. We'll come and stretch and fold, and then I'm literally just going to leave it the rest of the day. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Okay, one more stretch and fold. Like I said, the biggest pain is just getting through these 30-minute intervals on the stretch and fold. Just going to do this one on each side again. sorry, I'm not doing a very good job of filming. Okay, this one. I don't know if you'll be able to tell when you do this, but the dough is really kind of changing quite a bit now. So I think that's what kind of makes the texture of the bread better. I've done this with no stretch and folds. I've mixed it and then just left it on the counter to rise overnight. And it's still pretty good. This just makes a nicer texture bread. Okay, I'm going to cover this and let it set for tonight. And it really depends on how warm your house is. My house is kind of cool because it's still pretty early spring. So I'll probably not do this till really close to bedtime, but I'll just leave it on the counter. Make sure your cloth's good and wet or it'll kind of dry out on top, but I mean, if it does, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I'll show you what this looks like tonight. Okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about when I stick this in the fridge tonight. I use these Banneton baskets. You can get them, a couple of them for 20 bucks off Amazon. And they're just super convenient, but I've used just a bowl with a towel and then just sprinkle a bunch of flour in there so the dough doesn't stick to the cloth. And I've put that in the fridge and it's worked great. Like I say, I just use these because they're just a lot more convenient and lighter. But this works if that's what you got. Okay, we're ready to take this bread out. It's 9:20, so it's been all day rising. I'm gonna put some rice flour in this to keep it from sticking to the cloth. And if you use the other cloth, then that works. Hey, quiet on the set. So you can see this bread, it's more than double in size probably. I'm gonna wet my hands. I'm gonna break it loose from this bowl a little bit. Production quality is excellent on this. I'm gonna kind of carefully lift it out here. Oh. When you're doing this, you want the top to stay the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of push and pull this along the counter, and it starts to tighten up. Like you'll see the top start to round, kind of turn into a loaf. And you don't want to flour the countertop because you want this to kind of be sticky so that it does pull the bread together. You can see it starting to really kind of turn into a loaf, I guess. All right. And then I just put it in the basket. We'll do the same thing here. Just kind of stretching it a little bit to work the dough a little more. Same thing, when you start doing this, you can feel it's kind of, I don't know, you can feel that loaf kind of start to build as the tension builds on the top. Okay, so I'm just going to cover this with Saran. I'm going to put it in the fridge until I'm ready to bake it. And you can leave it anywhere from, you could bake it now if you wanted, or you can leave it in the fridge up to 36 hours. So cut it. Okay, I'm getting ready to bake. It's about 3:30 Sunday afternoon, and we're gonna eat about 5:30. I'm going to preheat my oven with these Dutch ovens in there. These are enamel covered cast iron Dutch ovens, and they work really good to cook the bread. You can cook them just on a tray. Well, I'd put it up here, but then you've got to put a bunch of water in the tray for steam for the first 20 or 30 minutes. But if you have a Dutch oven with a lid, you don't have to do that because it traps the steam in the pot. So anyways, I'm gonna preheat this to 450. And it takes a while, so we'll get this going. Oh, and I wanted to say, I put this cookie sheet in the bottom there because it helps the bottom of the bread not get like super hard and crusty. So anyways, I'll come back when we're ready to put them in. Okay, I just got these out of the fridge. Just got this out of the oven. I'm going to, I won't be able to do this with the camera. Put this non-stick parchment paper. Maybe I'll do it. Flip it. Pull this off. This is where a lot of people do fancy, pretty scoring. I don't really do that. I'm not gonna be able to do this with one hand. Maybe. Now let's do this. All right, I'm gonna score it and put it in the pan, and then I'll turn the camera back. I just scored it to give the bread a room to expand. And I'm just gonna put the lid on this. I'm gonna do the same thing with the other loaf and pan, and I'm gonna cook them covered for 30 minutes. I did kind of want to show this. I have this, I think it's called a bread lamb to score, but you can use a really sharp knife or a razor blade, or I've even done this. Just cut some snips in it with the scissors. That works too. Okay, this is cooked for 30 minutes. Pull the lids off. Off yourself. All right, this is gonna cook another 15, 20 minutes, and then it'll be done. You want to let these sit for at least a half an hour before you cut into them. They get really gummy if you don't let them cool off. It's really hard not to, but they'll still be warm. It's going to be good.